You don't need yet one more bitch in her mid-20s to tell you that Toonami owned. But hear me out anyway. Following the unprecedented, record-breaking success of that cartoon with all the crucified robots in 1995, Japan's anime industry exploded. At a rate contradictory to the stagnating economy, more television anime were being produced than ever before or since, as more and more production companies hedged all their bets on any anime studio that promised it could deliver. This had some truly implosive effects on the industry. Animators were sweatshopping it hardcore. Some anime didn't even make it out finished. But the end result was one of the most artistically diverse and experimental decades in anime history. With this much art, this much potential flowing out of Japan, Western television networks had no choice but to take notice and invest. American subculture in the late 90s and early 2000s were all about the razor's edge, where sleek design danced with unrestrained, explosive creative energy, and anime was the perfect distillation of this fusion. Toonami was the stomping ground, where the framework would be laid for all future animated explorations of the word cool. Before Teen Titans, before Avatar, before Code Lyoko, before Totally Spies, there was Dragon Ball, Gundam, Sailor Moon, and, Hamtaro. Shouts out to all my ham heads. Among all the reverence for the aesthetic and the bumpers, for bringing an array of classic shonen anime to their widest international audience yet, there's one series that's been a bit lost in the fray, despite both having a significant impact when it aired and still being just as good now as it was in its heyday.
Can't escape it, ain't no use in trying. No exceptions, love will leave you crying to death. You're a broken man, boy.
Speaking with zero nostalgia, having only seen the series for the first time in 2019, 1995's Tenchi universe is just the best. It's so much fun, has a cast of effortlessly iconic characters, a god-tier soundtrack, a genuinely great dub, and some of the most delicious autumn scenery this side of Butt Attack Punisher Girl Gotemon. I went into this series, part of the larger Tenchi Muyo franchise, as a nostalgic curiosity to throw on in the background, but left it feeling like its characters were literally my friends, eager to revisit them the second I had the opportunity. And a potential video makes for a pretty good opportunity. I was shocked I loved it so much. This is a series that by and large is remembered in the same breath as modern harem anime like Love Hina and Please Twins. I'm fairly neutral on them, but harem shows have kind of become the whipping boy for everything that makes anime inaccessible to non-weebs, so needless to say, these comparisons aren't exactly flattering. Let's, for the sake of simplicity, define the modern harem anime as a fan service-laden story about a cast of impossibly anime-hot cute girls shacking up with an unassuming nice boy they're all madly in love with. While I wouldn't say Tenchi Universe is definitively not a harem, it carries surprisingly few of the tropes the genre is derided for. I think this misconception has been built up over the years, both for how the show was initially marketed in the West, and for how its later incarnations would really double down on the haremisms.
You shouldn't leave me behind like that, Daddy. It's so mean. I want to be here.
I'm taking a bath here, Mayuka!
Tenchi Muyo is a massive and endlessly confusing franchise. I'll get to all that eventually though, don't worry. Just know for now that Universe is easily the most accessible, carrying next to no sequel baggage, and is, depending on how you look at it, best enjoyed as your first exposure to the series. Tenchi Universe follows Tenchi Misaki, the grandson of a Shinto priest whose average life is made significantly less average when a gaggle of bizarro space women all wind up sharing a roof with him. These women are the capricious space pirate Ryoko and her pet Ryooki, Aika, the high-strung princess of the planet Jirai and her kid sister Sasami, the mad inventor Washu, and the galaxy police detectives Mihoshi and Kiyone. Eventually, the group, along with Tenchi's dad and grandfather, find themselves labeled war criminals in the midst of an intergalactic mutiny, cutting these girls' vacations woefully short. Somehow, the gang finds ample time to both chill and have hijinks, even while they're evading the law, and it's a great time for everyone all around. The thing is, among this cast of girls, only Ryoko and Aika ever show feelings for Tenchi, and the two spend much of the series fighting with one another as a result. The rest of the cast is either off doing their own thing, or otherwise just sees Tenchi as an equal.
All I am saying is that Ryoko must have taken Tenchi with her to some private place, and none of you seem to care at all. Ryoko! Where did you go? You cannot hide from me!
Mihoshi and Kiyone are preoccupied with their careers, Sasami's a child, and Washu loves herself far more than she could anyone else. Tenchi Universe isn't a series about romance nearly as much as it's a series about spending time with cute girls. Respectfully. And it's great at that. It's also got a lot of Star Wars in it. Very multifaceted little series. I gotta say, it's criminal there's no HD transfer of this thing out there. Yeah, sorry about the smear-o-vision in this video, it's the best we got. There are other incarnations out there that got the 1080p treatment, but no dice here. It's a shame because it's such a gorgeous show. It's rarely stunning in the animation department, especially when compared to other shows from the 90s anime boom, or even to its OVA counterparts, but it's the design of it all. The thick, gouache backgrounds capture fall atmosphere perfectly, especially the movie. I can feel the climate of shots like these. Universe also does one of my favorite visual tricks, where the palettes of the backgrounds, and in some more drastic instances, the characters themselves, are altered to match the mood. It makes sense that Tenchi's dad works as an architect and built their house. It's very uniquely structured. It must have been a pain to keep the interiors consistent. The Masaki household and shrine feel very lived in as a result, like the paths to and fro have been walked thousands of times. I'll get into it more later, but these character designs are fucking perfect too. Every single one. Each girl is differentiated visually in ways that go a lot deeper than just different hair and height and bust size. Everyone's eyes are stylized slightly distinctly from one another. This is most noticeable in Mihoshi's case. As we all know, the only thing better than loose-fitting 90s anime clothes is Among Us shoes. And each girl gets a few rotating outfits depending on the occasion, the weather, and what they're feeling like wearing that day. On the occasion the girls all need to dress up for one reason or another, they all wear clothes in ways that are distinctly them. Washu wearing big, oversized glasses when she has to pass as a schoolgirl, or Ryoko wearing tennis shoes without pulling them up over her heel in the first movie. Small visual touches like these make the show feel so considered. There's a lot of good over-the-top character acting, too. Nobody is too demure or normal to not let their personalities out to the fullest. I can't help but be a little worried there's no HD release because the 16mm prints are lost to time. As much as I hope I'm wrong, I am willing to believe it might have been the case because it does look like the reels were spliced pretty haphazardly, and there's a good bit of damage to the first frame of each cut as a result. Once I started noticing it, I just couldn't stop. I don't know a lot about how anime got mastered back in the day, so I might just be talking out of my ass. In general, I get the feeling that Universe was never as much the franchise's priority, so much as the OVAs were. At least the Laserdisc masters that are available on streaming sites feel appropriately 90s. This is a show that was made for CRT televisions.
Accepted. Tenchi Muyo is next.
When compared to the other breakout successes in the early Toonami years, Tenchi Universe was perhaps the most anime. For the Gen X otaku who got in through the hard shit released on VHS, anime was always obviously from Japan. That was part of the appeal. But the late 90s and early aughts kids were stuck with dubs that were pleading you to forget the continent of Asia even existed.
You have a tail and big fuzzy cat ears. I thought you were a normal girl.
But I am, Mark!
No, you're not. You're just a freak.
No, Mark, wait!
Yeah, Mark. Where other shows broadcast on Western TV were ambiguously different, Tenchi was loudly a piece of Japanese animation, and the dub retained that fact. In this regard, it made for a perfect entry point into the medium. It's got the hot girls, the cool hair, a rural Japanese setting surrounding a Shinto shrine, bathhouse scenes, a cute mascot character that turns into a meowing spaceship, a whole lot of mech worship, bestiaki emo, multiple extended scenes featuring rapidly flashing lights. Ow! The hot girls. Oh god, what was I saying? Sorry, I'm kind of seeing spots here. Man, can streaming services please start rolling out an anti-strobe option like the SNES Classic? I feel like a fucking California raisin. This series didn't just make for a good entry point because it was a distillation of what made anime different in the 90s. It was also just good. For a long time, the recurring theme among anime fans has been that you need to show non-otaku the utmost cream of the crop to really sell them on anime. Akira, Ghibli, Cowboy Bebop, but let's be honest, that's a pretty limited sample of what anime is like in a broader sense. If those anime are Michelin-starred steakhouses, Tenchi is like the beachside Taco Bell cantina in Pacifica, California. It is the heartiest, most idealized version of what the majority of your dining experiences are realistically going to look like. Also, you can get shit-faced there.
I tried hard, but felt it way so long. I hope we could, but I won't start over again.
Universe's 26 episodes are divvied up into 3 main arcs. These are delineated by the show itself as On Earth, episodes 1 through 10, Time and Space Adventures, episodes 11, 12, and 13, and In Space, episodes 14 through 26. While still clearly the same show, these are all different enough that they're worth addressing on their own. They're all great for different reasons. The first 5 episodes of the Earth arc are dedicated to introducing each of the main girls, 1 per episode. There's a lax pace to it, even as girls crash land in Tenchi's backyard and repeatedly drag the poor guy into their ceaseless bickering. The mundanity of sitting around eating dinner together, tending to the house and shrine, staring out at the autumn leaves and watching TV contrasts with and breaks up the mounting chaos that follows the cast. Once everyone is all together and the foundation is laid for each character's relationship to one another, the show goes full chill out. These are some of my favorite episodes. They prove the cast is strong enough to support even the simplest of scenarios. Something as slice of lifey as a festival results in some of the biggest laughs. Likewise, a premise as simple as it's snowing is fertile ground for one of the most heartfelt stories. I think my favorite episode is from this batch, but I want to talk about it a bit later. The Time and Space Adventures arc more so bridges the gap between the 2 major arcs, being an adaptation of a drama CD. The idea here is that Washu, the genius inventor, creates a series of parallel universes loosely based on each of the girls' greatest desires. The characters have been defined just enough up to this point for these stories to fit the girls they're associated with, but they're all still fresh enough that they act as windows with which to learn more about the cast. They baboke into a bank! Since there are 5 of these stories in just 3 episodes, they feel a little cramped, and coming off of 4 hours of television setting up the roles in the first place, it can get a little tedious. Though I feel like if the series had waited a few more episodes, it would have felt really out of place and like a drag on the pacing. Since it occurs right before things really kick off, it feels like a fun diversion, like cleaning up some side quests before switching to disc 2. It also ends with one of the funniest gags in the entire series, where magical girl Sasami accidentally chemtrails Aika and Ryoko into falling in love with one another. The final 12 episodes that comprise the In Space arc are by far the most diverse. And while I could totally see this being a turnoff, that it's a little bit hard to gain your footing, I love it. In addition to giving the characters a whole new set of verbs and settings to explore, the dimension that they're now the most wanted criminals in the galaxy forces them into these clever workarounds to avoid getting caught. For example, the episode where they tried to invade a spaceport by dressing up as schoolgirls, yes, including Tenchi, and Mihoshi gets them busted by accidentally trying to bring a fucking gun onto an airplane, is one of the best by far. This is the arc with the beach episode, and their solution for entering a swimsuit competition is to claim that they're just really good lookalikes. It's incredibly silly how paper thin that logic is, but the show has no qualms about not taking itself seriously. That's not to say the series isn't capable of being serious, though. The last handful of episodes make it good on all the mounting drama without suffering from too drastic a shift in tone. My brain is not big enough for the level of space politicking that goes on in a lot of sci-fi dramas, so it is with utmost relief I share with you all. Tenchi Universe's story is not at all convoluted. The political intrigue is all one big framework for the exploration of the characters' feelings and relationships, because after all, Tenchi Muyo is about the characters. This is why, though we're getting a teensy bit into spoiler territory here, I wouldn't say any spoiler agnostics in the audience need worry too much about what proceeds. You can't really spoil what makes the show so special without just putting it in front of someone, because it's the culmination of all of its moving parts. Still, if you're sold on going in with next to nothing by what I've said so far, you're welcome to come back later. As for the characters, first things first, I need to take a second here to defend the honor of my little guy, the titular Tenchi. This is the realm uninformed parties get the most twisted when it comes to conflating Tenchi Muyo with the harem genre at large. People who haven't seen any of Tenchi probably assume he's your bog-standard generic self-insert protagonist, lavished with importance and attention he's done nothing to deserve. What is there to say, right? Even among people who have seen and liked Tenchi, it's easy to want to defend him with the tired old anime protagonist adage, well, he's different because he's nice. Bitch, I'm nice too. Where's my dump truck's worth of hot alien women? In all seriousness, Tenchi isn't a particularly deep character. He's a simple guy with simple motives who usually does things because they're just the right thing to do. What Tenchi succeeds at is the careful balance of qualities that, in a lesser anime, might make him unbearable. For example, he's kind of snarky. He gets exasperated with the girls' unreasonable demands and isn't afraid to talk back to them. When he's put into crazy outer space shenanigans, sometimes he's got some funny little why me quip about it.
This is really great. Look, the Earth is just a tiny speck now.
Oh man, no kidding. How am I going to get to school tomorrow?
Hey, this is not a sitcom. We have more important things to think about, don't we?
And you must call me Little White Shoe, okay?
Alright.
Yet, he's not so consistently cynical that he feels like a jackass, and he's not such a complainer that he feels like a drag. There's an almost dad-like quality to his witticisms. In the aforementioned Force Femme episode, when a guard tells him he's got a masculine frame, he nervously retorts,
Well, I have a father who's a man.
"That's cute, dudes rock." Another realm in which Tenchi flourishes as a protagonist is that his lack of reciprocation for Ryoko and Ayaka's affections is neither obliviousness nor necessarily indecision. So many will they won't they dynamics are ultimately fueled purely by characters being fucking stupid about each other for no good reason, but these three work well. Ryoko doesn't really take her feelings for Tenchi seriously up until later in the series, and I think he appropriately responds to her flirting as the borderline rat tail pulling it is. Ayaka and Tenchi, on the other hand, have some moments of genuine tenderness when they're left alone, but Tenchi knows she has duties to attend to and seems fairly unconflicted whenever it seems the two might need to part ways. So it's clear he isn't even really entertaining her as a serious possibility. And, despite his lack of outward interest, Tenchi's surprisingly mature about communicating with Ryoko and Ayaka when it really matters. As for all the other girls, well, they're just his wacky found family, and he treats them accordingly. Tenchi regularly seems pretty fed up with his father's womanizing tendencies, and to a lesser extent his grandpa's, so while it isn't stated outright, you get the impression that Tenchi's hands-off approach to the women in his life is out of a desire to be more respectful than the other men in his family. This is exemplified in the genuine kindness he shows equally to all the girls, not just the ones who want to milk him dry. He invites Kiyone and Mihoshi over whenever they're struggling financially. He's genuinely appreciative of Washu's talents. He takes time to talk to Sasami as an equal when she gets left out of conversations because everyone else just sees her as the kid. He really talks to Sasami with this charming, sibling-like demeanor. Some of my favorite character moments are him and Sasami being the straight men sighing over the messes the other girls make. Across the board, despite filling the shoes of a hapless protagonist, Tenchi manages to find enjoyment in, or otherwise adapts to, all the complications these girls thrust his way. It's refreshing too that even as we learn more about his family, he's never the most powerful or most important character in the series. When it comes to the climactic battles, he's usually the one to land the finishing blow, sure, but Ryoko is so OP that they arbitrarily had to come up with limitations on how her teleportation abilities work in the movie so that the entire build-up to the climax wasn't destroyed by asking, why can't Ryoko just fly the ring to Mordor? Tenchi's surrounded by incredibly smart, strong, magical women, and even his grandpa's got the upper hand a lot of the time. Damn, Gylfi, you still got it! In fact, Katsuhito is the catalyzing factor in most of the circumstances that Tenchi finds himself in, so technically, Grandpa is the most important character. He just kind of ran away from the aftermath of his own actions long enough that the repercussions fell to his grandson instead. He plays this kind of cool background mentor role to Tenchi, training him both physically and spiritually for the trials he's likely to face later in life. I love that Tenchi being trained with the Shinai justifies him being good with the Lighthawk saber way later on. It's the simplest A to B foreshadowing in the world, but it just gives consideration to Tenchi's needs as a protagonist in a way a lot of other shows don't. I've also gotta say, Tenchi's really cute. He looks awkward in some episodes, but I love how egg-headed he is. Jim Jenkins, Nickelodeon Doug ass. His eyeliner game's tight as all shit, too. It's hard to make super short hair look good in anime style, so I'm always impressed by the shots where his hair looks particularly well-shaped. Phenomenal good boy energy top to bottom. And, you know, Tenchi Muyo is, as many anime are, a coming-of-age story at its core. And it's nice to say that by the end of the Universe movies, without saying too much too soon, Tenchi actually comes of age. Going back to a previous point briefly, it's not quite as though Katsuhito and Nobuyuki are made wholly unlikable for their womanizing, nor do they get a pass for it. Those are just facets of their characters that are taken with their other traits. Perhaps this can be chalked up to the fact that in the original OVA incarnations, they were based directly off two anime directors that mentored the series creators. In fact, their relationship is honestly one of the sweetest, being that Achika, Tenchi's mom, died long ago. It's nice to see the two still live in the same house and care very deeply for one another. These two banter like a duo who never would have met or gotten along had they not been through the grief of losing their most treasured person at the same time. Especially in the space arc, when their house is teleported aboard the Yagami, and the duo hang back and let the kids do the adventuring while they keep themselves occupied. I know this is one of the dub's quirks, being a fairly literal translation of Japanese speech patterns, but the fact that Nobuyuki always calls Katsuhito dad is so cute. Okay, we can finally talk about the women. Ryoko is literally introduced having crash-landed on Earth because she was drunk driving her pet cat. She's instantly transparently horrible and selfish, immature, a pervert, a wanted criminal, and the best character in the whole show. I adore her. A true gaslight gatekeep girl boss. What can I say? I love nothing more than a girl who's here to have a good time, especially when her idea of a good time involves gross negligence toward the safety and well-being of pretty much everyone around. Ryoko's such an easily understood character that she's almost hard to talk about. What you see truly is what you get. She's just fun and cool. She's got plenty of interiority, but it always feels a bit silly to talk about when a series speaks this so directly. Her hedonistic tendencies come from somewhere, and her evolving relationship to Tenchi reflects that. I think Ryoko is at her best when she's got a foil, and the series gives her several, each with their own dimensionality. From the bitter former lover energy she and the bounty hunter Nagi share.
Thanks very much, Nagi. You just saved us.
Don't get the wrong idea. The only reason you're here is because I don't want anybody else to take Ryoko's life.
Oh, I see.
To the delicate push and pull between her and Tenchi, but especially with Aika.
We're everlasting.
What? Jiraiya's royal family is never lasting?
Everlasting.
Well, isn't that too bad?
Aika's precocious, snooty Ojo-sama shtick is a lot of fun when mixed with Ryoko's rotten attitude. Ryoko knows exactly how to use Aika's short-tempered disposition to make herself look like the victim between them. Their non-stop fighting does belie a degree of care for one another, at least by the halfway point. The two go through a lot together. In a sense, their mutual care for Tenchi, who by that point has been put in a good amount of danger, causes them to begrudgingly lean on one another every now and again. This is something we especially see in the last film. You can tell that Ryoko's just having fun pushing Ayaka's buttons, much in the same way she doesn't take toying with Tenchi seriously, until she realizes she's been invested in him for a good while. Meanwhile, Ayaka's fully cashed into this new lifestyle, secretly yearning hardcore to become permanent, so it's no wonder this princess is so touchy about everything. I think without Ryoko, Ayaka would be really unlikable, but with another character so routinely knocking her down a peg, those almost annoying qualities feel more like they play an integral part of a comedy routine than anything. Ayaka's personality is contrasted by Sasami's drastically. Despite being sisters, the two are different in almost every regard. They certainly don't look like siblings. Sasami being one of the most mature members of the group in some ways, despite her being the youngest, is so cute. I wish we saw more of her and Ayaka interacting. There's a lot of untapped potential there, big missed opportunity. She's introduced traveling from Jiraiya to pick up her sister, and we see her trying to wrangle her every now and again, but that's about it. Sasami winds up off in her own zone most of the time. If she's not cooking for everyone, she's usually off with Ryo-Oki. You can tell that because she's the kid, the writers struggle with giving her stuff to do. Makes sense that one of the only Sasami-focused episodes features a ghost girl that only appears in that episode just to give her someone else her age. I kind of appreciate this, like it's so bar through the floor to say, damn, it's refreshing to hear the gang tell Sasami, why don't you wait until you're older to join a swimsuit competition, huh? I don't want to talk about what's up with Sasami and the other Tenchi Muyo continuities, though. Washu's whole thing is being braggadocious and self-aggrandizing for her genius-level intellect. She's on some real Mensa member shit, and unfortunately, she's my least favorite of the bunch. Mind you, this is more the result of everyone else being so strong that there's inherently a weakest character by extension. She's got a lot of good moments, but rewatching Universe right after watching the original OVA series for the first time, her personality is the one downgrade. I think this has more to do with her character relationships than anything else, though. In Universe, she's pretty heavily relegated to being an evil genius scientist, creating quick and dirty solutions to problems the cast face, so she's more there for utility than anything, and doesn't build up any relationships to the other characters. A second ago, I called Ryoko the best character in the series, but Mihoshi is my favorite. She seems like your standard ditzy moe through helplessness bimbo, but there's this subtle twist that takes an archetype I already love and pushes it to the next level. She knows she's dumb. She knows she's a walking Rube Goldberg machine of destruction. She just can't help it. Even her idealized alternate universe sees her being a tremendous fail wife, constantly being put down by her sister-in-law. Mihoshi's constantly switching back and forth from being apologetic to being fully willing to be as dependent on Kiyone as she knows she needs to be. Kiyone, on the other hand, is introduced under the assumption that Mihoshi died, and she's thrilled about it. Kiyone is such a career-minded woman that she can't keep her disdain for Mihoshi a secret, but it never seems to faze Mihoshi in the slightest. Kiyone seems to know deep down that because she's stuck with Mihoshi forever, she's got to learn how to care for her, and the moments where the two get along best are the ones where their work as Galaxy police detectives don't get in the way. Yes, you heard me right, but trust, barring Sonic the Hedgehog, Mihoshi and Kiyone are the only blue lives that matter. I think it's funny how in every AU, or under every disguise, these two wind up being the adults of the group. They're always chaperones or teachers. You know, I can't help but wonder if Mihoshi and Kiyone were partial inspirations for Yukari and Minamo. That might seem a bit out of left field, but that's probably because not many people know that Kiyohiko Azuma essentially did officially sanction Tenchi Muyo doujinshi back in the day. I own a compilation of some of them. I got it from a book off in SoCal a few years ago on the cheap. There's a lot of stuff focusing on Kiyone and Mihoshi, almost as much as the stuff focusing on Sasami, but let's not talk about that. There was a good amount of doujin-y one-off Tenchi manga produced by Pioneer, and some of these are fucking wild. I love it. There's actually a small but dedicated sect of people who go hard for these two, and I see it.
That's right, because we two are partners forever. We two are partners forever. We two are partners forever.
Absolutely in love with the multiple 10-plus-year-old Mihokyo AMVs out there. Jesus, she's going straight for the tit. My girl. During the Earth arc, the two wind up living together in a dingy apartment, desperately scraping by to make ends meet. And there's one episode in particular that really hones in on that. Episode 6, No Need for Resident Officers, that captures this perfectly. It's probably my favorite episode in the whole series. I'm always and forever a sucker for stories that really capture being a flat, broke laborer. It comes close to Nia Under 7 and like the early seasons of Malcolm in the Middle in terms of working class solidarity. They even mention the 90s Japanese recession by name. It's really sweet seeing them budget in time for frivolous purchases like time at a karaoke bar, the whole Masaki household coming over to their female living space to share food and hospitality. I don't know, man, it just made me feel very fondly for everyone who ever helped to ameliorate shitty financial situations I've been in, even if it was just by sharing some company. Good stuff. I didn't mean to talk about these two for so long. They just really encapsulate a lot of what makes the series great. I suppose now's a good time to say that on my second channel, I do follow-up videos where patrons write in and I answer their questions. The videos are totally free to watch by anyone, so catch the link in the description to that channel if you want to check that out. Same goes for my Patreon, and a time-stamped list of songs used as well. This time around it's going to be a bit different. I'll also be looking over this character book with my wife, who joins me for these Q&As. Tenchi Universe was her first anime. Our conversations about the series as we rewatched it together really helped solidify my own opinions about the show, and she helped me co-write the script. We had a lot of fun diving into this franchise, sampling all the different weird odds and ends, so there'll be a lot for us to get into. Sorry to break up the pacing. This is the closest thing to an ad read you'll ever catch me doing. Hopefully that's alright. Thanks, y'all. Let's get back into it.
Hey, Ryoko! Oh, no. Ryoko, you were such a good person. Well, not really, but...
Look, I'm just gonna say it. This is my favorite anime dub, like, of all time. Over Golden Boy. Even over Soul Eater, and I think Soul Eater's English cast is better than its Japanese cast. It's not even because I think it's the best acted or most faithful or anything. It's just so iconic. Tenchi Universe is one of those 90s anime like Great Teacher Onizuka that just doesn't hit quite the same in Japanese once you've heard the English cast. There are some weirdities and wonkeries, like Tenchi's dad sounding like Homer Simpson.
Will we collide? Checkmate! Ah! Art, I don't want to alarm you, but there may be a boogeyman or boogeymen in the house!
Or everyone saying Mihoshi's name like
Mihoshi.
or saying
Kiyone.
But I was honestly just endeared to those things by the end. I guess it's easier with dubs from this era to say, yeah, them's were the times. Many of the dub cast in Universe weren't even really dub actors, predominantly having a background in theater or radio before there was really even a thriving market for anime dubbing, and a handful of them didn't do more than 1 or 2 roles in anime dubbing in general. That's not to say they were amateurs, far from. Rather, this saves Universe from being plagued by many dub-isms, certain speech patterns or habits of over-enunciating that plague anime dubs of all shapes and sizes. The script is nicely punched up all around. You can tell some lines were added in where they didn't exist in the Japanese version. Small things usually, but they add flavor. I really like the decision to spell Ayaka's name as Ayaka. It might not be accurate, but it's a whole lot clearer than letting the cast and fans accidentally pronounce it as Aika or Aika. Understanding Japanese phonetics wasn't a prerequisite skill for dubbing anime in the late 90s, and it still isn't today. There's clearly a lot of love put into how characters talk to each other. We see Ryoko totally change her manner of speech to butter up other characters.
Hey, this could be a fun way to kill some time. Come on, Princess Frady Cat, let's check it out. Come on, let's go.
Kiyone noticeably breaks from her usual pleasantries when it's business time. There's a running gag about Ryoko and Ayaka having a series of chance encounters as children, but each girl tells the story in a different way that paints the other as an aggressor. And not only do they speak differently in these flashbacks because they're children, they have totally different tones of voice depending on who's telling the story. Ryoko's versions, Ayaka has this horrible shrill quality to her voice.
This planet is derived royal family's territory. Just who gave you the permission to play around here?
And in Ayaka's, Ryoko speaks in even more of a brash tone than she does as an adult.
Did you make that thing yourself?
Another example of this is how Tenchi talks to Sasami. He doesn't talk down to her at all, but instinctually puts things in a way she'll understand. I love the scene where he describes Nobuhiko's job to her as
Dad draws up the plans for other people's houses.
so cute. Sasami's actress, Sherry Lynn, has this natural, effortless, childlike cuteness that so many dub actresses lack.
I'm Sasami. I've come to find my older sister. I don't know, Tenchi. Everyone else is working there as stall keepers except me. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. It was Ryoki's fault, wasn't it? It's okay. Would you like some cotton candy?
She also voiced Kiyone, who always sounds appropriately exasperated with Mihoshi, who herself sounds
Yeah, and I don't want the goblin to come to life and, put a curse on us, you know?
exactly as airheaded as she is. The only recurring voice I'm not 100% sold on is Washu, but I only ever found her grating when she's shouting. In universe, that's kinda common, but in the films especially, when she gets to take things seriously, she's solid and gives the character a kind of maturity that lends to her being the one who's ostensibly in control the most.
Thanks for waiting! And it's just the way you wanted it!
Get a hold of yourself. We have to pay a visit to Jiraiya's royal palace now.
Let's be real though, this dub is Patria Burchard's Ryoko. She captures the full range of all the different facets of Ryoko's personality perfectly. She nails the half-mocking seductress shtick.
Come on now. Look at me.
I don't think so.
Don't be a pain, Tenchi!
The brazen cocksureness.
This woman needs to be disciplined, otherwise she'll become even more arrogant!
Yeah? Just how are you gonna discipline me exactly?
She doesn't skip a beat during the more serious moments either, the tender emotive scenes, nor the rare instances where Ryoko's confidence breaks and she falters.
I'm a space pirate, and a powerful one. I could just steal you away if I wanted to.
Tenchi fans of all walks seem to agree Burchard is one of the most important, most iconic facets of the entire franchise. She's indivisible from the role, like Bela Lugosi in Dracula. After Universe, there were a few weird shakeups in the dub cast, and even though some actors are shared in a few of the later incarnations, I think the voice director must have changed, because it just doesn't feel right. Tenchi in particular loses some of that simple thoughts only befuddled tone of voice in exchange for a much more, anime dubby quality.
Whoa, thanks, Sasami, that's cool. I think I can handle it myself. Hi there, I was just on my way to take a bath.
That's not my boy. And it actually straight up makes me feel crazy to hear Ryoko not voiced by Burchard.
Hold it! You're not going anywhere. You're completely covered in mud.
No, I can't take the credit for that one. That was all Ayaka's doing. What do you mean all my doing?
Oh shit, while we're on the aural side of things, I can't believe I haven't talked about the music yet. Christ. It's one of the best facets of the entire series. You've been listening to a lot of it throughout this video, so I'm sure you've noticed it owns. I'll be straight up, I'm talking about the franchise's music as a whole, not just universes, because it'd be too confusing to split hairs otherwise. Some songs from the OVA are reused in Universe, both of which were composed by the same dude, which, man, my fucking compliments to Seiko Nagaoka. All the vocal teams in the series just knock me on my ass. Talent for Love is straight up one of my favorite songs of all time. full stop. Like, it's smile bomb tier. All the vocal themes compiled on the American Tenchi Muyo CD bring the fucking swing out sister heat so hard it makes me wanna break out. The fact that they have such legit vocalists, and for the most part translated these songs to match the cadence and meter so naturally, is fucking wild. Like, we did not deserve this. It's one of the best batches of translated lyrics I've come across. Karaoke is a big part of the series. It's one of the few activities that bring all the girls together. Singing is very much so a symbol of solidarity in universe, so it's fantastic to see. As for the OST as a whole, I straight up cannot believe how many gorgeous, fully realized songs are crammed into this thing. In particular, Ryoko's theme is an all-time banger. And this song, sometimes called Serenity, while only 50 seconds long, packs all the punch of a full 4-minute Cocteau Twinks song. This shit's got me swinging on a Fibu Street. I think the thing that impresses me the most about the show's score is how diverse all the synth tones are. A lot of shows from this era, it's easy to be like, yeah, this thing is stacks on deck every day with the Yamaha DX7, or like, damn, this soundtrack is all wave station all the time. But it's hard for me to point to a particular synthesizer that defines the Tenchi Muyo OST. I'm pretty sure there's a good bit of sound canvas in there, at least with the faux acoustic instruments like the harmonicas and kodos and stuff. If there's one instrument that underscores much of the show's soundtracks, it's the fretless bass. Which is routinely on some true virtuoso shit. And that's not even touching on the soundtracks to the movies, which, okay, let's talk about the movies. Right off the bat, Tenchi in Love, released in 1996, feels like a movie. It's got a dynamic, reactive score by one of the fucking dudes from Tangerine Dream. It's in widescreen. It is ridiculously animated. We're in the big leagues now, baby. A real victory lap of a film. Tenchi begins David lynching out of existence, and it's revealed that a time-space wizard is attempting to go back in time to eradicate Yosho's familial line by killing Achika, Tenchi's mom, before her Jiraiyan powers are able to awaken. So thanks to a new invention of Washu's, the gang goes back in time to 1970 to save Achika's life, and, in the process, Tenchi's. While in the past, the cast has to assimilate themselves, Ryoko and Ayaka as classmates of Achika's, Mihoshi and Kiyone as teachers, Sasami as a student at a nearby elementary school, and Tenchi as, Tenchi's just kinda there. He can't get too close, much less come into direct contact with his mom. Like, come on, you know what happens when you fuck with the timeline too much. Because everyone's trying to blend in, we get a whole bunch of new outfits, like Kiyone's weird Bruce Lee getup or Ayaka's cute sweater. Tenchi's varsity jacket might be my favorite look of the bunch. I also love Ryoko managing to fit a tit window into her school uniform to match the tit window in the outfit she was wearing before they jumped into the time portal. I mentioned it before, but Ryoko wearing her shoes without actually putting them on properly is pretty indicative of the level of lavish detail put into everything here. There's a scene where Kiyone pulls Mihoshi by the ear, and like a minute later it cuts back to her sitting and listening to what Washu is saying, and she's gently rubbing her ear because it's still sore. Stuff like that is endlessly charming to me. Animation is cool, man. It's a good fucking thing too that this is one of the few portions of Tenchi Universe that's available in Blu-ray quality, because this movie is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Full fucking stop. It's a goddamn work of art. We even have a cell from the damn thing. It's from this scene. The gang spends a lot of In Love's runtime separated or in small groups, but it actually really helps the pacing by giving the main romance time to breathe. That being the romance between Tenchi's mom and dad. This element of the film is so sweet. After 26 episodes of the show coyly dancing around capital R romance, it's nice to watch the writers really pull it off so effortlessly. In particular, the way in which Nobuyuki and Achika bond over Nobuyuki's interests is so fucking cute. Achika keeps up with him when he's being stoked over new tech and matches him when he's talking about architecture. While Nobuyuki sketches a future home, she's even the one to suggest putting a window through the roof, which becomes one of the most iconic visual designs of the Masaki household. Achika is across the board much spunkier than your average anime mom. She fits right in with the rest of the cast. I hate to admit that I'm not super sold on the last act. It swerves a little too drastically into the 1954 Godzilla territory with the back and forth of begrudgingly using a heavily destructive weapon in a remote area. It's an interesting idea, it just clashes with what I was really into about the film. Thankfully, it doesn't diminish the pathos, which is in abundance.
What you doing, Aika? Having a dirt sandwich?
That's fine.
Only 7 more days. Be careful.
Right.
I know how this is going to sound, especially from my mouth, but hear me out. This is a movie about Tenchi falling in love with his mom in the familial, platonic sense. Because Achika died when Tenchi was so young, he doesn't really remember her. Most of his memories were given to him by hearing stories from Nobuyuki and Katsuhito. He loves his mom, misses her dearly, but he hasn't really ever felt what it's like to know her. So, despite the circumstances being so non-ideal, he's cautiously excited to meet her indirectly, to just watch her be a person and exist. It's truly heartrending to watch him have to witness her from afar, and to know that this connection between them deepening is essentially also a process of mourning his mother in real time. It's very beautiful and sad. It's poetic in a way the film never really addresses directly until the end. But as we watch everyone else fawn over Achika and Nobuyuki and involve themselves in their lives, inviting themselves to be around Achika for the sake of her safety, it's clear that this is an extension both of their pure-hearted love for Tenchi, as well as the love Tenchi can't himself explicitly give to Achika. At the film's end, before her memories of the situation are wiped entirely and Achika knows that she's just met her future son, the very frank conversation she has with Ryoko and Aika, in which her one wish is for the duo and the rest of the cast to just take care of him in the way she won't be able to when she's long gone, is, man, I don't know, dude. Stories about moms just hit in a way no other media does.
Look at that! The Aurora Borealis!
Aurora Borealis!
Alright, here's where shit gets weird. Tenchi Muyo, Daughter of Darkness is, by most accounts, the second of 3 Tenchi Universe movies. Disregard that shit completely. In Japan, Tenchi in Love and Tenchi Forever are referred to as In Love 1 and In Love 2. This middle film, Daughter of Darkness, no relation to the 1970 vampire psychodrama flick Daughters of Darkness, was originally produced to double bill with a Slayers film, and is not part of the Tenchi universe continuity. It's part of what fans call the Hasegawa continuity. This continuity pertains largely to the 12 light novels written by Naoko Hasegawa, as well as a few stragglers, one of which being Daughters of Darkness. It appears to resemble the universe continuity because it has Kiyone in it, a character who isn't featured in the OVA continuity, but it is not. I'll talk about it more later, but the Tenchi Muyo continuity is a fucking nightmare, so that needed to get sorted. I'm still gonna talk about this movie though. I wouldn't have gone into that much detail to say it wasn't part of the same continuity if what I was getting at was as simple as, yeah, you can skip it. No, I mean, I can't make the call on whether or not you should skip it, but you can rest assured knowing that it's not canon and doesn't take place between the 2 most emotionally understated works in the entire universe continuity. Okay, for fuck's sake, let's just get into it. Words cannot do justice to how fucking insane this movie is. The most manic pacing, the most bafflingly ill-conceived premise, the highest concentration of the word daddy I've heard in a 60-minute span, the most incoherent plot. Tenchi is way too buff. Kiyone is voiced by Wendy Lee, absolutely fucking twisted. That 60-minute runtime feels like 600, even though it also feels like you're watching it at 1.5 times speed. Tenchi has a maybe biological clone baby teenage daughter who appears from thin air and looks like a reject Evangelion Mahjong game side character who constantly alternates between calling Tenchi daddy and behaving like a child and literally trying to fuck him. Like, I'm talking tongue his nips fuck him, but also sometimes tries to kill him because a Christmas goblin in space is secretly controlling her, and when she invariably dies at the end, everyone screams and cries because they can't believe they'll never get to see her again because, hey, some of the times they had together were kind of nice. The end credits sequence features Washu rebuilding the clone baby as an infant and everybody fawning over and helping to raise her and celebrating Christmas with her. It's simple fact that there's nothing implicitly funnier than an anime infant. That's probably just a me thing. While editing, I realized I probably didn't make it clear enough. I loved watching this movie. I loved watching it in the same way I loved the Mr. Wacky Inflatable TV News interview. I loved watching it in the same way whenever I make pickles from scratch, I have to fight the urge to just fucking drink vinegar. That movie has a truly hostile atmosphere through pure accident that was just mesmerizing to watch. You probably shouldn't watch it, but had a pretty good time. Don't worry, Tenchi Forever is fucking weird too, but in the opposite way. Right at the start of the film, Tenchi gets sucked into a big tree and disappears. Then 6 months go by and everyone's still looking for him. Ryoko and Ayaka in particular have moved to Tokyo in hopes they may find him there. While this goes on, we see a slightly older, much longer-haired Tenchi living a domestic college life with a girl named Haruna. Ryoko and Ayaka keep catching glimpses at Tenchi, but are never able to get through to him, and on multiple occasions consider giving up on him entirely. Turns out, though, that Yosho's youthful fuckmaster streak has stricken again because, yes, he has rended so many hearts that this is the second Tenchi Muyo movie in a row about a scorned former lover of his. This time, Tenchi's trapped in a fuck bubble with his grandpa's ex-wife, Jimmy Neutron.
It's a great likeness. It's good, Tenchi.
The first thing you'll notice about this film is that it looks super different from the rest of the series. The Forever character designs were done by Hideki Takahashi, who went on to do a ton of work on Mamoru Hosoda films, starting with Our War Game, and I feel like that connection really shows. I could totally see these redesigns being a turnoff by comparison, but everyone being taller and more realistically proportioned matches the tone well. Yeah, the second thing you'll notice about this film is that it feels super different from the rest of the series. Gone is the slapstick, the space operatics, the sense of adventure, and in their place is an incredibly quiet, understated, almost boring mood. I love it. If I may, I'd describe the film as a maturation. It takes all the naturalism in Tenchi and Love's best moments and puts them under a magnifying glass while eschewing the loud action that began to feel a bit obligatory by the last act. If you told me this was intended to be the final piece of media in the entire Tenchi franchise, I'd believe you. But obviously it was just getting started. Despite only coming out 4 years after Universe, it's got this reflective quality to it, like a franchise in its twilight years weighing the course of its own life in retrospect. It's got the very post-Evangelion introspection, Haruki Murakami magical realism. There's even a good bit of Lum the Forever in there. It's wild. Even though it was one big animated brain hemorrhage, Daughter of Darkness did have one really good scene between Ryoko and Ayaka. Well, it was good if you could expunge from your mind for a second that they were talking about Tenchi's time being monopolized by his maybe daughter. Thankfully, Forever is chock full of moments twice as good as that between those two. We watch them have to reconcile with whether or not what they're doing is even noble, if the way the two cared for him was ever anything but selfish, and if they pushed Tenchi away by constantly trying to monopolize his attention. It is genuinely emotionally complex, and the two grow from the time they spend together. The toll this takes on them, how they struggle at their jobs, feel embarrassed and ashamed, and in their own ways come to comfort one another is, well, it's
Ryoko, you're so strong.
Go to sleep.
It's very interesting. Dude, Tenchi fucks in this movie. It's crazy. And it's like unlike any kind of anime sex I've ever seen before. And trust me, I've seen a lot of anime sex in my day. Sorry, Mom. For real though, the number of lovingly animated close-up shots of hands, fingers interlacing and grabbing at one another and shit is absolutely deranged. Alyssa and I were screaming. Pretty much everything in this movie that's framed in close-up looks amazing. The film's not as well animated across the board as In Love, but it more than makes up for it with some really clever cinematography. The shot composition is very reminiscent of live-action cinema. It plays with diegesis to really magical effect, and fuck, dude, the score by Tsunayoshi Saito is an absolute chiller. Like, if you told me this was the soundtrack to a movie about a guy accidentally fucking his grandpa's dead girlfriend, I'd say, yeah, that sounds about right. Honestly, I believe it. This film's atmosphere is one that contrasts romanticism with unease. Haruna and Tenchi's relationship is one that seems like it should be perfect, looks like it should be perfect, begs to be perfect, but there are these disconcerting, almost uncanny elements creeping up out of the soil, displacing the earth beneath their feet until it's impossible to ignore. And the soundtrack matches that tone to a T. Occasionally, the orchestration will hit a note that seems just slightly out of line with the established harmonic core, or the rhythm will knock itself slightly off kilter. I know some of these tracks are interpolations of pre-existing Chopin preludes, but Christ, they blend in so masterfully you wouldn't even notice if you didn't already know the compositions. I have no clue how this dude isn't more renowned. It looks like he's best known for doing the music for Dendo Coil and the Professor Layton film, and it's a shame he hasn't done more. It does actually make perfect sense he scored Eternal Diva. There's a lot of incredibly lush accordion all over this thing. It's just phenomenal, top to bottom. Oh, and the fucking ending theme was co-written and performed by Henri, who's one of my favorite city pop musicians. Like, shit, this movie's music was already sitting at a solid 10 before you brought in the bitch who made Timely. I just love music. All in all, I think Tenchi Forever is an unexpected but perfect way to send off this leg of the franchise. It gives weight to every last emotion its cast faces, gives them space, and makes them more real than ever before. In a series whose previous finales have involved spaceship warfare and interdimensional kaiju fights, it only feels right that the final battle would be with the mundane, the very passage of time and its threat of silently eroding away everything we know. If I was just a little bit crazier, I'd say you should just watch this if you're only going to watch one Tenchi thing, but I think I can only extend that fuck-brained recommendation to anyone who prefers anime that feels more like French cinema than anime. I can't think of very many pieces of media in general that scratch the exact itch this scratched for me, outside of like Only Yesterday and Ocean Waves, which are my two favorite Ghibli movies. We don't have time to psychoanalyze what that says about me though, so let's just keep rolling. I alluded to it earlier, but Forever establishes that Tenchi takes up drawing inspired by his father's adolescent love of art. We see his father sketching scenery in the first movie, a clear prelude to his career path as an architect. I feel like this small bit of growth for Tenchi, this nugget of finding something he loves, combined with Ryoko's fond reaction to it at the end of Forever, is the perfect bookend to Tenchi coming into his own as a person, with feelings and desires outside of getting tossed around by the stormy grandpa waters and stormy hot girl waters that otherwise seem to dictate his life. Our little guy's all grown up, and it's time to let him continue his story all by himself. Though this film closed off Universe, Tenchi Muyo is a whole-ass franchise full of too many different continuities to name. This series spans books, games, manga, anime, CD dramas, stage plays. There's a lot going on. However, everything I've sampled has pretty much 100% sold me on Universe being the cream of the crop among all the other incarnations. Don't get me wrong, I don't dislike the other Tenchi shows, they're just all, complicated in some way or another. Let me get into it. So, once more, Tenchi Universe isn't the first Tenchi series. The first was a 7-episode OVA called Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Oki, which has since spooled out into a 30-episode series that is literally still continuing to this day. Those first 7 episodes act more or less as the Tenchi Muyo Rosetta Stone, being the purest distillation of the canon every other series would iterate from. That first season was what I watched of it, although it's worth noting many swear up and down that Ryo-Oki is the best Tenchi thing, period, in its entirety, taking the series as utmost gospel when it comes to how characterization should be handled. It's hard to get concrete info on the various Tenchi continuities without really digging, because each series has overlapped with at least one other series, usually but not always in a different continuity. It took me several charts and graphs and wiki entries and just sampling a good chunk of the entries to have down what I do, and I can guarantee you I fucked some stuff up, and that I'm going to get an earful from any and everyone who catches me slipping. So be it though, I'll take those L's when they come. How much can you really blame me though when almost every website, including official sources, use promo art from the wrong series on pages for different Tenchi shows? For fuck's sake, AniList, that's Ryo-Oki art, not Universe. It also complicates things that in Japan, Tenchi Universe is just called Tenchi Muyo. There are also a few music tracks from Ryo-Oki that are reused in Universe, as well as the shot of Ryo-Oki, the character, transforming into her ship form. That's why she looks so much more feral here. You really have to squint to figure out which parts of the series take place in which continuity until you just sort of develop a fluency for it, like I have. If you're not careful while watching Universe, you may find yourself Googling, how related are Tenchi and Ayaka? I mean, they both have royal dry blood, after all. If you were to see someone answering on behalf of Ryo-Oki's continuity, the answer would be very related, because I shit you not, Tenchi is Ayaka's brother's grandson in that series. Don't worry, in Universe, they're only distantly related, and she's not even endgame anyway, so, it's chill. I could sit here and go over all the differences and my full thoughts on this first OVA like I did for the movies, but honestly, it didn't really click with me. I know how this is gonna sound, but what I've seen and read about was honestly a little too weird, even for me.
Tenchi, I'll be glad to bear a child, if the child is yours.
I found it alienating. I'm not trying to stoke any flames by saying anything that might even so much as pass as definitive though, so let me just give you my hyper-condensed thoughts. We're going speed round. This shit is fucking gorgeous. The first episode of the first OVA in particular is brimming with lively animation. It felt like a particularly rich meal. I felt satisfied to the point of being a little tired by the time credits rolled.
Mommy.
It was definitely my favorite, and by the first few episodes, I was pretty ready to say it had the potential to be my favorite iteration too, but the pacing got all out of whack and it just kinda lost me by the end. It was cramming a lot of clearly loving world building into a scope that was just a good bit too small, and it sacrificed the kind of moments I really care about. Like I said, Tenchi Muyo is about the characters in my eyes, and this felt like a version of the series where the characters were superseded by the story and the lore. It felt like a movie adaptation of a game, like a lot was being condensed and treated as a given. It's like Tenchi Muyo on anime hard mode. Plot twist. Turns out I'm handing myself the fucking L this time. And as my penance, I am recording this at 3 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day to admit that, through pure mistake, we didn't watch the 7th episode. I thought people were counting the Mihoshi special as the 7th, but no, it's a double-length episode that has more of what I was hoping for out of the OVA. The gang just chilling out. We see Sasami explain shoujo manga to Ryoko, Tenchi sets up a carrot field for Yo-Oki, Ryoko tries to cook. It's good stuff. It feels like an OVA episode of a TV anime in this regard. Doesn't do much to set up the next season, but acts as a nice way to round things off. I do think there are just a few too many bits about Ryoko and Aika trying to court Tenchi, which I think plays into yet one more reason I liked Universe more. The cast are a unit who all play off one another as a unit. Everything feels more centered around Tenchi in the OVA, and while I love Tenchi, I definitely don't love watching these girls do nothing but sabotage one another for Tenchi's attention. It borders on making Ryoko and Aika kind of unlikable. I joked about girls wanting to milk the guy dry, but there's a scene where Washu literally dresses up as a nurse to try to collect a sperm sample from him. The dub is particularly good in this one though, especially the mixing of all things.
Honorable sir, could I honorably, humbly... Can I use your phone?
I may not have watched this episode until I had already written and recorded and edited this section, but I still stand by what I said herein. This continuity is just kind of a lot. I'm not in much rush to figure out how this weird little Tenchi-shaped baby from the second OVA season fits into things. Oh, and speaking of babies... In addition to the animation being expectedly superior, there was one other element I liked more than Universe. I mentioned it already, but I'm talking about Washu. Bizarrely, in this iteration, she's Ryoko's mother, like the word ovum is on her wiki page mother. It's definitely weird, especially in how it makes Ryoko a cyborg. I definitely prefer her as a mysterious, freewheeling space pirate of unclear origin more, but the dynamic of Washu trying to goad Ryoko into calling her mom is a lot of fun.
Listen, Mom! What's the problem?
This all technically makes Ryoko and Ryo-Oki sisters, by the way. The Tenchi Ryo-Oki family tree is just absolutely penised all around. Like, I'm not even joking, every character is related. Because Washu is Ryoko's mom and is the sister of Toonami, who Sasami is fused with, and is also the great-great-grandmother of Mihoshi, literally every character is related to everyone else in some way, shape, or form. Even Ryoko, because she's the demon trapped in the shrine in this iteration, has known Tenchi since he was a baby. And she still wants to fuck him. Good God! Like, I need to stress, Aika is assigned to be her big half-brother Yosho's bride, while she's still a child, like literally 6 years of age, and he's a grown adult. And she falls so madly in love with him that when he disappears to live on Earth, it causes her to project onto and want to fuck Tenchi when they meet. Oh, but Aika assures, on dry, it's normal. Look, all I'm saying here is there should definitely be a few more Charles II of Spains in the mix. The autopsy reports. He had a single testicle, black as coal. Oh, monarchies. Viewer beware, for 1997's Tenchi in Tokyo kicks off wearing the clothes of a universe continuation, though it becomes clear within literal minutes that those clothes are hand-me-downs, and that you're watching Universe's little brother who still chews with his mouth open even though he's turned 12 like 3 months ago. It's not actually a continuation, it's a 100% standalone work, and I don't know, man. We only watched the first few episodes, but they were a mess. Everyone was way more obviously in love with Tenchi and in competition with one another. The Monster of the Week shtick just felt wrong for a franchise like Tenchi Muyo. Across the board, it just felt like everything people assume the franchise is all about that causes them to stay away from it. If anything, I'd say Fetus of Fartness spiritually fits in better within Tokyo than it does Universe. I gotta say though, I fuck with the insane Cotton Eye Joe ending theme with the 3D orbs. As for the other iterations, man, I'm doing y'all a favor by not digging deeper. Not even because none of the rest of it is any good, definitely not, but because you don't have to get overloaded with information the way I did making this. Just don't ask me about the catgirl coronations or what trium herbs are. Don't ask me how many different Pretty Sammy continuities there are or which universe the games fall into. Don't ask me why the very first piece of Tenchi Muyo media is a single frame in the 126th episode of the Ranma 1/2 anime. Don't ask me why Ryo Oki has 2 different human forms in addition to the Cabot and the spaceship forms, one where she's a child and one where she's an adult. Don't ask me why Washu has 2 different human forms, one where she's a child and one where she's an adult. Don't ask me why Sasami has 2 different human forms, one where she's a child and one where she's an adult. Don't ask me how Dual Parallel Trouble Adventure, Photon the Idiot Adventures, Spaceship Agaruder, Paradise War, Masquerade, or Battle Programmer Shirase fit into the bigger picture here. I'm begging you. This franchise gets so off its own tits that there are multiple shows with the Tenchi Muyo name that barely feature Tenchi Misaki at all. Like, fuck, they really said, yeah, no need for Tenchi, get him the fuck out of here. Like, just look at this. Look at how many times Misaki Kajishima has drawn Ryoko as an infant. This is not a normal franchise. Oh, there actually is one adaptation that's kind of recent. It's a spin-off about a totally new character in a totally new setting, but Ryoko's there, and she's great in it. It's called The Owl House, and I've only seen the first season, but it's good. I wasn't super invested in the main character and kind of wished it was just about Ryoko, who in this universe is named Ida. Far from the weirdest leap in the franchise's continuity, though. I love this dub actress for her.
Ah, baby's first wanted poster. Good job, kid. Looks like I taught you something after all.
She's sincerely almost as good as Burchard, maybe even as good. It's hard to say, they're different flavors. Hello, future Hazel again. It is 9 a.m. the next morning, and I figured I should clarify that no, The Owl House is not an official piece of Tenchi Muyo media. I mean what I said about the show, though. It is so cute and fun. And if I'm right about her being at least partially inspired by Ryoko, I honestly think that's one of the best, most natural ways of implementing a love of anime into a Western cartoon I've yet seen. I haven't watched the second season yet. I should get caught up. For any and all roasts I put this series through, don't let it confuse you into thinking I dislike all the other iterations. Even if none of them hit on the same things that makes Universe the Tenchi for me, it's very possible different elements will make different Tenchis the Tenchi for someone else. I could totally see in Tokyo's spirit hunting Monster of the Week format and hyperactive pacing landing far better for some. Likewise, like I said, most every dedicated Tenchi Muyo fan swears up and down that Ryo Oki is the most rewarding experience. You're more than able to make your own judgment call on which series is the best in your opinion, but I still stand by my opinion that Universe is the easiest to get into. It works out too because the vast majority of this franchise's anime is just on YouTube, dubbed too, as of the time of this recording anyway. That's how I got to use the extended clips of my favorite moments in this video, as well as a bunch of character songs.
Oh, don't sit there. Please. Don't touch it.
Oh, this is
What do you... Now go away! Go on!
I'm really banking on this not changing and the channel winding up with a copyright claim or something. This is an instance where gauging Tenchi Muyo's impact on Western anime fans is a bit difficult. See, unlike Elfenlied, this actually was just a hair before my time, and unlike Minna Agechao, the internet had grown just decentralized enough that getting the full scope is much harder than trawling through a single forum. I can say this, the comments section on just about every Tenchi video on YouTube is pretty illuminating. It's a lot of people commenting on the show's particular nostalgia. I've talked about this with Digimon Tamers, but I think it's true here too. Tenchi's not been very well represented in the Western media landscape since the toonami era was in full swing, so for a lot of folks who grew up with it, it wasn't until they suddenly recalled what an impact the show had on them in their youth that they thought to even search it up online and revisit those memories when they're at their most potent. It's a side effect of the show not being better known, but I think that's pretty cool. Instead of speculating to draw some greater conclusion about what kind of effect the show had on the generation that grew up with it, I'm giving it up to my darling wife to give a more personal spin on things. As I mentioned, she co-wrote this video with me and also made a video about Furby bootlegs you might have seen. That's one of my favorite YouTube videos.
Hey everyone, my name's Alyssa and I'm Hazel's wife. I missed the boat on a lot of the anime that were my generation's typical first. I was tragically banned from Pokemon because Pikachu's an evil temptress. Dragon Ball was too muscly for my delicate tastes, and I was afraid of asking permission to watch other magic-laden cartoons like Cardcaptor Sakura or Sailor Moon, lest they also fall under the umbrella of Satan cartoons. I didn't understand then that they were anime or Japanimation or even that they were made in another country, just that they looked amazing and were so different from anything I'd ever seen elsewhere. I was 9 when Tenchi Universe was re-airing on Toonami, and it changed my life. So the funniest thing about my first watch through of Tenchi is that I started watching right at the beginning of the Time and Space arc. Yeah, the arc that's just a bunch of self-contained AUs. That wasn't confusing at all for my squishy child brain. And actually, I remember exactly how I felt about it because I kept pretty extensive diaries for myself as a kid, and I happened to write detailed summaries for every episode of Tenchi that I was able to see, because I was so mystified by it, and I think maybe I was scared I'd forget what it was and never see it again, like it was some kind of hazy, alien babe-filled dream that was gonna vanish when the morning arrived. I had so much trouble figuring out what the characters' relationships were to each other because of the alternate universe shaking up the roles. 9-year-old me actually wrote the sentence, "In this episode, Tenchi and his countless girlfriends go to the beach." Like, damn, got it in one, kiddo. I remember after the first episode I caught, I immediately wanted to play Tenchi. You know, the way kids just kind of run around LARPing their favorite shows. I tore through my closet and I pulled out my most recent Halloween costume, which happened to be Mulan, because it was the closest thing to a Tenchi outfit I could find. I spent the whole day trying to impersonate what I remembered of Ayeka. Don't worry, the irony of a Filipino kid wearing a Chinese outfit to LARP as a Japanese character isn't lost on me. I was 9, okay? I was so in love with these characters already, and I didn't even know how to spell their names. For a few diary entries, I referred to Ryoko only as Spiky Girl, and Washu as Female Knuckles Wannabe.
Oh no!
I knew pretty quickly that I loved Ryoko the most though. Here's a drawing of her from one of those diary entries. My username on Neopets was I'm Ryoko 2000 because I wanted to be Ryoko, and it was the year 2000, I guess? Survived Y2K the Ryoko way. Of course, I didn't see my love for this character as anything other than above board. I had solidly tricked myself into thinking I was straight because I had a crush on Banjo the Bear once. Did I even know liking girls was an option? And yeah, I was so ashamed of my fixation on Ryoko that sometimes I tried to condemn her behavior to myself despite actually really admiring her. The funniest bit of this is in my summary of the beach episode. I wrote, "You should see Ryoko's dumb suit." Now, I lied to myself a lot in my diaries just in case I became famous one day and then died, and then biographers wanted to read my incredibly interesting child thoughts for documentation purposes. I distinctly remember writing this sentence as a lie to myself, and I promise I'm not saying that just to retcon how I felt. Sorry to my parents if for some reason they watched this video, but that Christmas, I got 2 Tenchi Universe DVDs, and one of them had this cover, and I was stoked. Now I could look at Ryoko's dumb swimsuit whenever I wanted. Safe to say, Ryoko is definitely something of a gay awakening for me. Even now, I don't really know what it was about her that charmed me so much. I think I just thought she was cool. She was powerful as fuck and seemed to know what she wanted out of life more than the other girls. The funny thing about this is I rewatched Tenchi Universe in my early adulthood and hated Ryoko on that rewatch. I thought she was kind of an unredeemable asshole for caring so little about the well-being of the other characters. But then I rewatched it again a few years ago when my brain had finally finished developing and realized, nope, Ryoko's just cool as fuck actually. I loved Ryoko so much that I have almost no memories of what I thought of Tenchi in Tokyo, except that I drew non-stop effigies of Sakuya, because even at age 9 or 10ish, I was already enough of a Ryoko waifu guy that Tenchi betraying her to go prance around in the city with some boring whore filled me with weird, indignant child rage. I know you guys don't really know me, so this uncomfortable insider information about my tastes in women probably doesn't mean much to you, but I am Hazel's wife, so draw whatever conclusions you may about how this reflects on her. I really cherished what few pieces of official Tenchi merch I was able to get my hands on back then. Physical images held a certain kind of precious currency in a semi-pre-internet world. By semi, I mean, sure I had internet, but waiting half an hour for a couple images to load wasn't exactly easy or accessible. And my family shared a computer and probably didn't want me taking up precious megabytes by saving hundreds of JPEGs of anime women. Also, I had like an hour-long computer limit, half of which was getting eaten up by logging the fuck in and loading JPEGs of anime women. Printer ink was expensive for my family too, so on the rare occasion I was allowed to print out an image, or even better, acquire a physical item of some sort with art that I liked. I looked at that shit for hours. Yeah, I was a kid with a 3-ring binder of anime pictures. I brought it with me to church youth group and made friends with the one other anime liker I was able to hunt down. This was a time when it was exciting to meet people who even knew the word anime, let alone liked it, let alone was a little freaklet who liked the same anime as you. This youth group friend of mine had never seen Tenchi, but she did get me to read Tokyo Mew Mew.
You're just a freak!
This is kind of an aside, but I so badly wanted to make my own Tenchi fan site. Ah, fan sites, the 3-ring binders of impermanent digital media. Of course, all that probably would have entailed was stealing images from other fan sites and affixing my own unintelligible baby ramblings. But I was just enamored with the idea of having my own fan site, so with my carefully curated selection of saved Tenchi art, I made an enormous canvas in Photoshop and pasted images and text all over the place as if the canvas itself were the body of a page to browse. I knew this was just a cheap imitation of the real thing, but I had no idea how to make a real one, so this satisfied the itch for now. I remember there was a far off corner of the canvas where I put something like, "You have found Ryoki's secret zone," and I pasted in a picture of Ryoki with carrots or whatever. I bet my parents really loved however much hard drive space this little venture in web design took up. To those who don't know, I'm an artist full-time. Nowadays, artists my age who grew up getting their minds blown by the early mainstreamifications of anime are a dime a dozen, so I doubt my story's anything interesting in this regard, but I just want to say how thankful I am that a show as beautiful as Tenchi Universe got to be one of the foundational pillars of my art. I think at some point I was able to print this official art of Mihoshi. It may just look like any other picture of Mihoshi, but child me regarded this image with more reverence than Mother Mary. The bold shading, the detailed folded clothing, the interesting contours of her hair, and the perspective on her arms. I'm sure you get the picture by now, but this was just so different from the other cartoons I was watching. When I was 5, I loved the Powerpuff Girls, and I drew armies of my own fan characters. That simple, fingerless style was perfect for a blossoming baby artist like me. But now I was almost an entire decade old, and I wanted to draw fingers and shit. So I sat down with this Mihoshi and, to the best of my abilities, tried to copy it from sight. Sadly, I don't have that drawing on hand, but I remember being so proud of myself. I'd never tried to draw something so complicated before. Soon, my binder was full of my own drawings, alongside copies of my favorite official art. I took these drawings with me to youth group and proudly showed them to my one anime friend, who was always really encouraging of my endeavors. This motivated me to draw even more. I wanted to have bigger, better drawings of anime women to show her every week. Of course, this was just the beginning for me, and I'd go on to dedicate the next unspecified number of years trying to perfect the delicate art of drawing beautiful anime women. It's still a work in progress. I'd say I still can't draw as beautifully as the art in Tenchi universe, but I'll keep trying.